Now, one more thing. This is another American Communist Party publication. Listen how powerful this nugget is. There is no way anyone can unlink the Soviet Union or other socialist countries from the world revolutionary process. The Reagan administration will have to learn that the key indestructible link of world reality is the relationship between the Soviet Union and the world revolutionary process. So the communists say it's a world communist movement. Every country has a communist party. The Communist Party influences all other parties, all other people. They influence mass movements, mass trends. They talk about the radicalization process and how it's proceeding. It's absolutely amazing. And now we're seeing the culmination of it. We have total chaos in this country, social, cultural, political, economic. And that's exactly what the communists wrote describing Gramsci's strategies. And this is worldwide. And they look to the Soviet Union for leadership. Now you have China. So that creates more confusion among the conservative side. It's a world communist movement. And their policies are what created woke. You have the drugs, you have the transgender stuff. All of these things going on come out of the communist parties. Now, the Communist Party in the Soviet Union doesn't push that in their system. That's meant to have an impact on the target countries, the countries that are not yet communist. So we need a major awakening. People have to understand it's a communist movement. There's no way to hide it and cover it up. And then, of course, you've got the globalists. So the communists are internationalists. Then you have the globalists. There was a major report in the New York Post. Let me see. This is Tuesday, June 2024, how Henry Ford's fortune is being used to rip America apart. Foundation's been a piggy bank for decades of leftist agitators, and there's too much to read here. I'm going to have to photocopy this and send it to you guys. So money from the Ford Foundation is going to groups that are working for Communist China, and they specifically were working among blacks. This is, like I said, it's too much to read now, but I will get this photocopied and get it out to Jeff and Trevor, and then they'll get it to you, John, because this is very important stuff we have to get out there. We are in a huge mess. I mean, the enemy could kill us with fentanyl, they kill us with heroin, and our side doesn't realize that we're under attack. It's incredible. And now they have us fighting among ourselves. So the Democrats are really heavily influenced by the communists, and yet they think we're the enemy, that we're the fascist. But every country the communist trade revolutions in, they were fighting against fascism. Or in South Africa, they were fighting against apartheid. They almost never make it open a communist revolution because they will not get the masses if it's an openly claimed communist revolution. So they'll make it an anti-racist revolution, an anti-homophobe revolution, an anti-apartheid revolution. This is how they work, and this is how they have the power, because there really is no knowledgeable, organized movement against them. There's us. So there's one guy in New Zealand, there's one guy in Germany, there's one guy in one state, another guy here, another guy there. We don't have a massive movement. We have the ability, if somebody had the money and the ability to bring people together, we have the knowledge of what the American masses need to know. If we could get our knowledge into the masses of people, we'll be in good shape. And that's what we all been trying to do for many, many years.
Yeah, the problem is, though, that there's this huge system out there that's blaring these other narratives. And the interesting thing is people really have lost focus. George Santa Anna once said that fanaticism consists in redoubling your efforts when you have forgotten your aim. And it seems to me when you look at MAGA, when you look at what initially Trump promised, there's some of this going on the right. And of course, it's always on the left. You know, they say they want to better the lot of the people and minorities and so on, but their actual policies destroy that, and they just want stranglehold on everything. And it doesn't work, but they never are willing to admit the fact that they produce worse conditions because their fanaticism is, well, we need more power so we can accomplish this. Well, the more power they get, the more they strangle everyone. And that's how the Soviet system worked.
Have I ever told you the story about the Moscow toilets?
The
Moscow toilets. This was
Moscow toilets.
Yeah, this was a story, because we were talking about toilets before. This was a story. My friend who infiltrated the New Zealand Socialist Unity Party told me back in the 80s. He was sent to Moscow to train in 1983 as a undercover agent inside the Communist Party, went to Moscow, trained at Lenin's Institute for Higher Learning. So he goes to Moscow and he's training for 6.5 days a week, this delegation of 4 people. And they get little field trips. They went out to a field trip to a car factory on the outskirts of Moscow. And they went in there and this was producing Fiat 124s. It was designed by the Italians, built by the Italians, knocking out thousands of Fiat 124s, which they sold in the West as the Lada car. And so this was a wonderful factory, it was all beautiful, state-of-the-art. It was 1983, so it's as modern as you could get back then. And some of the communists said, well, all this mechanization will put people out of work. And the guys would say, no, that happens in the West. In the Soviet Union, the opposite happens. But anyway, the one rule was you are not allowed to go to the bathroom. In this mod, you were not allowed to go to the bathroom. But he has to go. He has to go. He just has to go. And he sneaks away from the party, finds a room that looks like a bathroom, and opens the door. And he's expecting to find cubicles and urinals and, a restroom. What he sees in this beautiful modern factory is a concrete floor, a big concrete floor with little pipes sticking out of to squat over, covered in filth, and a hose to wash it down with. No privacy in the whole room. And he wouldn't even go in. He goes back and he bails up the tour guide and said, what? I've just seen your restrooms. Where is the dignity of the Soviet worker? And the guy pulled him aside and said, look, he said, John, we can't have cubicles in our restrooms because we cannot trust the worker. If we had cubicles, the workers might go and read a newspaper while they're supposed to be working, or might smoke a cigarette. They might even commit a homosexual act. So that's not the end of the story. So my friend goes back to New Zealand and he meets up with Ken Douglas, the head of the New Zealand union movement and the top communist. He was the champion of the worker, the top union workers champion in the whole country, the top communist. And he'd actually personally recruited my friend into the party, or he thought he had years before. And my friend recounted this incident and the disgust he felt at the way the workers were being treated in this modern factory. And Ken Douglas looks at him and says, you know the story, John. Surely you know the story. And he said, no, what do you mean? He said, if we ever get power in this country, we're going to treat the bastards exactly the same way.
Wow.
Tell me how wonderful the working conditions in China are.
Oh.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
There was another incident.
Really for the people, yeah.
There's another
They got
incident.
screens. They have screens on the windows because a lot of people are jumping out.
Yeah, they'll throw themselves out. Yeah. The Apple factories, the Foxconn factories have nets around the outside on the second or third floor up because the workers will throw themselves off.
So when you go to commit suicide, you're disappointed by being caught in a net.
You get caught in the net and you get sent right back to work. Sorry, Trevor, go ahead.
Well, is it just another? See, we get this idea they tell us communism is about equality. It's not. It's about the complete centralization of all power in a very few hands. That's what it is. Like there was another instance. The other top communist in New Zealand came to visit this delegation while they were in Moscow and meet with Soviet officials. And my friend John and this guy, Bill Anderson, went out on the booze one night. And Bill Anderson was a total drinker. So this is in October or November in Moscow, middle of winter, and they have to go back to their hostel. And Bill Anderson's lost his shoes. He's got no shoes. And this is he's so drunk, he doesn't even know he's lost his shoes. So my friend has to get Bill Anderson back before he gets frostbite. So they go to the Metroport and he goes to pull him onto the train. And a little conductor about 4'3" comes out, blows the whistle because you're not allowed to be drunk on the metro, you see. And she says, out, blow the whistle. And then my friend knows if he takes him out, this guy's going to get frostbite. So he pulls out his party card, his communist party card from New Zealand, says, John Van der Ven, communist, Nova Zealandia. And the woman freaks out and they took everybody off the train. Everybody had to leave the train, so these two could go back to the hostel.
Yeah, they're the new ruling class, aren't they? They really do see themselves as the anointed. And this is where Thomas Sowell wrote The Vision of the Anointed. And he said these people, they think of themselves as special. This is where the narcissism, the criminality, the entitlement of the communist and socialist leaders comes in. This is where Andrew, thinking of his name, the Polish psychologist that wrote Political Ponerology, Lobaczewski, in his book, he says these people that, they notice these Polish psychologists Scientologists noticed after the communists took over that the spokesman, the people training everybody, they had signs of being psychopaths. They thought, well, we better study this regime. What kind of people get promoted in it? And it turns out that they found, after a 20-year study, that the people in totalitarian regimes, socialist regimes, National Socialist or Soviet Socialist, they promote psychopaths or what we would call cluster B personality, hysterics, borderlines, and narcissists, right? And psychopaths, antisocial personality, they call it now. They don't have that. That got too much stigma. They don't like to stigmatize patients. But these people are abnormal. And this is what Colonel Stanislav Lebedev told me. I asked him very naively, are there any good people in the Kremlin, in the Soviet general staff or the Russian general staff? Sorry. And he looked at me like I'd asked a really stupid question. And he said, these are not human beings. These are crazy persons. And then he gave me a lecture on what a psychopath Lenin was, and that he had access to the Lenin library, where there are 6,000 documents still hidden, classified documents, where Lenin is ordering the murder of women and children, the annihilation of whole towns, provocations to take out villages, kill them all, murder them all, using all interlaced with the F word and all kinds of, profanity. It basically just a bloodthirsty, psychopathic mass murderer, and they don't want the world to see that. Yeah.
I have some of that in Lenin's collected works. So it's from the Soviet Union. It's obviously printed in English. It's from the Soviet Union. I got it from the Communist Party. Lenin called for confiscating the grain and crushing the kulaks with the most ruthless terror. And in another thing, he was calling for German troops in Ukraine. I guess this was at the World War I or toward the end or something. He was calling for German troops in Ukraine to attack the Ukrainians. So Russia has been messing with Ukraine from the beginning, and they are crazy. It's like asking, are there any good people in the mafia? Well, theoretically, at the very lowest level, maybe a guy that's a numbers guy, he might be a good guy, although he's breaking the law. But when you get up to the higher up, you don't reach the highest levels without being a bad person. You don't become head of the KGB or head of the Soviet Union or head of the mafia without killing people and being ruthless,
killing and stealing your way to the top. That's the way it is. Yeah, look at all these. Look at how many people have fallen out of Russian windows since Putin's been president.
Well, in a free society, you can get to the top by being an honest person or by being a corrupt person. In a socialist society, you can only get to the top by being a corrupt person.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it.
Sergei Shoigu, right? Who was the former defense minister? He's part of the Security Council now. He stole, what was it, Jeff? $20 billion that was for their Armada program.
Well,
to bribe everybody.
It was more than that. But
he got promoted out of it.
Told me that it was he and his group. Within the Defense Department, they looted, I think it was $30 billion, but I'm not remembering the number exactly. But it was when they set up this whole procurement system for getting Russia ready for war. Evidently, they thought that it wasn't going to be ever seriously used, and they could just invent figures, apparently. And of course, there were stories in the Russian press, and there were rumors coming out of Moscow that these factories, the workers showed up, they were eager to get the jobs, but they weren't paid. And so eventually they stopped working because they weren't paid. And the factories, of course, if the workers stop working, they don't produce anything. But yet they kept them like they were operating on paper and producing things. And this is why the Armada tank never came out in its numbers, and why so many things never happened in Russia, and maybe why a bunch of the SS-27s don't work. This is massive thievery. Yeah.
Look, I have to go. Sorry, guys.
Sorry. It's okay, Trevor.
Right now.
It's okay.
But good talking to you all, and carry on.
Final thoughts. We're getting close to time. Your final thoughts. Jimmy, we'll start with you.
Yes, Francis Fox Pivens is a senior fellow at the KGB Front Group Institute for Policy Studies. Very dangerous, powerful group in Washington, D.C., Institute for Policy Studies. They shape policy. They pretty much are the ones who do the economic plans and all the other plans and stuff that the Democrats implement, and they work with the New York Times, Washington Post, all the media. Well, Francis Fox Pivens, in one of the events I attended, she said we're going to get the changes we want largely through minorities and immigration. And then you have the conspiracy here where the communists sent us a virus, changes how we vote. The communists had these plots against Trump, these plots against MAGA. So basically, the communists got in power, and then they opened the border. So we're being killed with the heroin and fentanyl. We have the open border, flooding the country with people from. And the Soviet publication stresses the Soviets work in Africa, Asia, Latin America. Africa, Asia, Latin America. That's in all their publications in that order, Africa, Asia, Latin America. So then they opened the border, and we're being flooded with people from Africa, Asia, Latin America. Africa, Asia, Latin America. We're being overwhelmed like 99.9% or some number like that is people from Africa, Asia, Latin America who are coming in. So when we round them up and start deporting them, the Democrats say we're racist and we're not deporting any white people. We're only reporting Africans, Asians, and Latin Americans. So you see how this works? It's like it's almost there's no way to fight it. They write their plans, they write their strategy and tactics, they carry it out. They describe how the Communist Party, how it's key to everything that goes on in every country around the world. And then they say we're going to, flood it. We're going to have the changes through minorities and immigration. And then we're flooded with 20 million minorities and immigration, and that changed how we vote with the virus. And then when we round them up, we're racist. So they flood us with people that are non-white, and then because we have to round them up and deport them, we're racist for deporting non-white people. This is the depth and the insanity, but the brilliance at the same time of the enemy.
Jimmy, if people want to hear more about the interviews you've given, how can they do that?
Well, the interviews we do here with you end up on Jeff Nyquist's website. I've done 20 or so one-hour interviews with Jeff. So most of what I've done, the only place where it's in one place is J.R. Nyquist, Nyquist, jrnyquist.blog. That's where a lot of my stuff, these joint things we do like this now, is going to be on Jeff's website eventually, and all the interviews I do with Jeff are on his website. There's other things on Facebook, YouTube. I found the other day one of my calls to Mike Savage. I found that on the internet where Mike Savage is talking to me, and so there's other things out there. I did a lot of interviews, or several interviews with Trevor Loudon. I did one of the documentaries, The Enemies Within, and hopefully I'm trying to find a way where I could get better, but I'm really I need a lot of help with this technological stuff that's already 35 years old. And to me, it's still like new science that I can't comprehend.
Well, we can talk about that offline, Jimmy. I can probably give you some pointers. We get you all sorted out. So it's good to have you back this week. Look forward to talking to you again next week. Jeff, final thoughts?
Well, the coming dictatorship, which is socialism, promises, if it's successful, it's not going to be what the socialists imagine. If it succeeds, it will succeed because of the mastery of mass psychology. It's not really interested in the individual or individual psychology. It's concerned with numbers. It's concerned with the mobs, with soldiers, whole races and classes. Whatever nobility it seems to possess is a pose, and its base cunning is its operative method from first to last. And we can't allow that in our society. We have to oppose it. And so when you have Pocahontas there talking to this new mayor of New York, you've got a witch's brew of stupidity or wickedness, whatever it is, coming onto us. And, to quote Edmund Burke, in the groves of their academy, at the end of every visto, you see nothing but the gallows. Nothing is left with which engages the affections on the part of the Commonwealth. And that's what it is. It's a mechanic philosophy, and you can't really base institutions that are humane on it. And this is what our whole intellectual elite believe wrongly. And I don't know how we back that up or how we undo that. It's going to be.
Let me get one more point here.
Yeah.
The communists are not winning on philosophy. Their philosophy brought people into the communist movement, but those people now are convinced communists. We're not going to be able to change them. But the communists are winning on strategy and tactics. And as Sun Tzu said 2,500 years ago, all war is deception. The number one rule of warfare is to know your enemy and the nature of the conflict. So we, Jeff, you, Trevor, all of us that are doing this, and Johnny there in Germany, we know the nature, we know the enemy and the nature of the conflict. We do these calls, we do the speeches, all the things we do to try to alert the American people, hopefully the people of the world, so they're aware of the enemy. That changes how we vote. That changes everything we do. It changes how we live. So we have the ability here to get the information. We have the information if we just had a better ability to get it out, because we could win if we got our information out. But the left has been running wild for decades and decades with no real opposition. And Gorbachev took away the image of the enemy to strengthen the socialist forces in the capitalist countries. That's in writing. That's in writing in communist Soviet publications. So all we have to do is pay attention to what the enemy is writing and doing. And we're doing that. So we are, in effect, we're war correspondents.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's it. That's all, folks.
If people want to follow your work and support what you do, Jeff, how can they do that?
jrnyquist.blog, jrnyquist.blog, and there's my my book page on Amazon where there's several of my books there.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, it's been a great conversation. I look forward to speaking to you all again next week. I'd like to thank you for being here today. Thank you to all of the listeners. God bless everyone, and have a great evening.